Is Sabbath rest a time to catch up on some extra zzzz because you are tired from working all week? This is lesson 5 on Sabbath rest, in which, besides commemorating the creation, we discover that Sabbath rest is the avenue to bringing balance to us and the universe. Our key text is Leviticus 23, verse 3, and it says, 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do no work on it. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. The title for lesson 5 is Serving Others Honors God's Sabbath. In the New Testament world, the religious leaders had Sabbath keeping down to a science. They had dozens of prohibitions and rules to help keep the Sabbath holy. They had prohibitions and rules even against tying or untying things. There were rules on separating 2 threads. Rules existed on extinguishing a fire. There were rules for transporting an object between a private and a public place. They even had rules for transporting things a specific distance. Worse than that, they had nerve enough to challenge Jesus with violating the Sabbath. In John 5, 1 through 17, we find the charges brought against Jesus. I'm reading it from the Clear Word version, John 5, 1 through 17. Sometime after this, Jesus made his way to Jerusalem for the next Passover, as many others. Near the sheep gates leading into the city was the pool of Bethesda. It was surrounded by 5 roof-covered porches with columns and arches. Here, many sick and handicapped people waited for the sudden and mysterious moving of the otherwise quiet water. People believed that periodically an angel came down from heaven and disturbed the water, and the first person in after the movement of the water would be healed. One of those who waited was a man who had been partially paralyzed for 38 years. As Jesus walked beside the column of the porches around the pool, he saw this man lying on a mat. Jesus knew by looking at him that he had been sick for a long time. So he stopped and said to him, "Would you like to be healed?" The sick man barely looked up, but straining his voice to talk, said, "Sir, there is no one here to help me into the water at the right time. When I try to make it to the pool by myself, the others push and shove and always get in before I do. So there is no use. I'm ready to give up." Jesus looked at him and said, "I'm not here to help you into the water. I'm here to tell you to stand up on your feet, then roll up your mat and go home." The man didn't even question Jesus. He just willed to do what Jesus said, put forth the effort to stand, and he did. And he found that he was healed. He reached down, rolled up his mat, and turned to thank Jesus. But Jesus had disappeared into the crowd. So the man tucked his mat under his arm and left for home. And this was on the Sabbath day. Now, here is where it gets interesting. When the Jewish leaders saw the man carrying his mat, they stopped him and said, Don't you know that today is the Sabbath and that it is against the law to carry your bed on the Sabbath? The man answered, the one who healed me told me to roll up my mat, pick it up, and go home. And they said to him, who asked you to do that? The man couldn't answer because he really didn't know who had healed him. He seemed to have vanished in the crowd. Later that day, Jesus saw the man in the temple thanking God for healing him. He walked up to him and said, it's good to see you well, but be careful. Don't return to your old lifestyle of sinning, or you might end up with something worse than what you had before. Then the man went to the Jewish leaders and told them that it was Jesus who had healed him and had told him to take up his mat and go home. When they heard this report, the Jewish leaders began to zealously pursue Jesus, looking for a chance to arrest him and stone him as a Sabbath breaker. Every time they confronted him with the question of Sabbath keeping, he would say, my Father does good on the Sabbath, and so do I. This answer only enraged the Jews. They were more determined than ever to execute him, not only as a Sabbath breaker, but also because he made himself equal with God by claiming that God was his Father. These religious leaders, completely ignoring the wonderful miracle that Jesus had performed and the freedom from disease that he had given this man, was obsessed that the healed man was carrying his bed in public on the Sabbath. Instead of seeing how the Lord of the Sabbath utilized the special day, the leaders were intent on maintaining their own rules and regulations. Now, this is a warning to us. In Sabbath keeping, we must be very careful that we don't make similar mistakes. We can avoid this error by adhering to Isaiah 58, 12 through 14. And it says in Isaiah 58, 12 through 14, outlines God's agenda for Sabbath keeping. Sabbath keeping is not for the selfish at heart, nor is it a time to seek personal pleasure or comfort. Empty worship and pious silence are not what God expects from us on the Sabbath. God wants to see his people engage with other people, especially the downtrodden and ostracized on the Sabbath. Isaiah makes this very plain in Isaiah 58, 13 through 14. It says, if you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord, honorable, and shall honor him, not doing your own ways, nor finding your own pleasures, nor speaking your own words, then you shall delight yourself in the Lord, and I will cause you to rise on the high hills of the earth, and feed you with the heritage of Jacob, your father. The mouth of the Lord has spoken. Pursuing our pleasure, Isaiah 58, 13, New King James Version, or our own interest, as the New Revised Standard Version translates, is equivalent to trampling the Sabbath. Selfish human agendas are not a part of God's Sabbath ideal. Rather, we're invited to look out for those who are struggling. We are to seek out those who are captives, those who are hungry and naked. We are to search for those walking in darkness and those whose names no one seems to remember. More than any other day of the week, the Sabbath should take us out of ourselves and our own selfishness. The Sabbath is a time for us to think more about others and others' needs rather than ourselves and our needs. This concludes today's lesson. Check out lesson 6 as we learn about the sign that we belong to God. If you would like to review a copy of the lesson, you can obtain it at ssnet.org, ssnet.org. Click on Adult SS and select Weekly Lesson. I thank God for the Sabbath rest, and I pray that more than any other day during the week, we will honor God's day of rest by being of service to others. Be blessed, and again, remember to check out the next lesson, Lesson 5, as we discover the sign that indicates that we belong to God.